Hello and welcome to Beyond Business, where we look at the latest trends in the global economy. The global market for wine is getting increasingly crowded. For long, there's been talk of Australia, South Africa and Chile taking on wine superpowers like France and Italy, but other countries are thirsty for success, and they include China and now India. France is the world's biggest exporter in terms of value, shipping wines abroad for more than 10 billion euros in 2011. The question is whether other countries could knock the French off the top spot. We'll discuss that issue in a moment, but first we'll take you to India to meet a wine producer there with global ambitions.
16 years ago, the crops most often grown here were tomatoes and cucumbers. Today, all one can see is grapes. The man at the helm of this empire is Rajiv Samant, a Californian businessman of Indian origin. He returned to the land of his ancestors with one goal: to be India's first wine producer. Now, he is Indian wine's biggest star.
About wine?
Yes, I love wine.
Yeah, which is your favorite wine?
Sula has been one of the forerunners in actually creating a market for wine, branding wine, and really getting the concept of wine drinking or an Indian wine out there in the open.
India, with its 1.2 billion people, is a huge market. Today, only 2% of its entire population drinks wine. But old habits are changing very quickly, and spearheading that change is Sula wine.
That it's the spot. A revolution is going on here today, where when we first started, it was very much the elite who were drinking wine. But today, it's definitely becoming a beverage that's being consumed socially by the upper middle class, you can say, which is still huge.
India has the largest middle class in the world, with nearly 250 million consumers. Sula dominates 70% of this market. To create his empire, Rajiv has not hesitated to grab trends from the historic wine territories of the world, like France.
Wine varieties are not Indian varieties. All from France and California. Sauvignon Blanc is there, and Chenin Blanc in white. In red varieties, Zinfandel, Cabernet, Shiraz, Riesling also.
Today, Maharashtra is the premier wine-producing region in India, and Sula produces 6 million bottles a year. And this is just the beginning. After the traditional white, red and rosé, Sula is now producing port wine and champagne as well. The customers here are well looked after. Tastings are frequently held to educate the Indian consumer about good wine.
Chenin Blanc is our largest selling white wine. It is a semi-dry wine. Semi-dry means semi-sweet, and dry means...
It's a good experience. I never tasted wine.
Nearly 95% of its current production is for the domestic market. But Sula aims higher and wants to improve the quality of its wine in order to conquer the international markets. And someday, perhaps even France.
All right, for more now, we can turn to Aymeric Mantoux. He's a journalist and writer, and he's the co-author of a book in French called La Guerre des Vins, or The Wine War in English. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, I know that you've tasted this wine from the winemaker Sula. What do you make of it? Any good?
Yeah, it is very good. It's much better than many French or foreign wines. It depends on which level you taste wines, but I'd say it's a very good basic wine to enjoy when it's hot and sunny outside above a swimming pool. And on that occasion, I actually had the idea of the book because it was the first time ever that I tasted in India such a good wine, and I told myself, if these people are able to make such a wine, maybe tomorrow they'll be able to do Premier Cru or Grand Cru, as we have in France, in Bordeaux, in Burgundy.
Do you think then that consumers around the world will soon be sipping white wine from India? Is that the way ahead, so to speak?
Well, so to speak, they are today drinking this wine everywhere in the world. I mean, as we speak, Sula wine is being drunk in New York, in Paris, and in South America as well, because it's a very good wine. It travels perfectly. And the businessman who is behind this wine has understood how globalization works. And this is something that many French producers have not understood. And this is why, in some markets, wines from Asia or from Brazil or from China are taking the pace on French wine.
Now, we have talked about new world wines for quite a while now. Wines from places like Australia, from South Africa, from Chile and other countries as well. But which countries do you think that we should be keeping an eye on? Who have the ability to increase exports dramatically in the next few years or so? Is it India? Is it China?
Well, what's amazing is China 10 years ago was maybe the 90th wine producer in the world. It's now around the 10th position, and it's growing tenfold every 10 years. So it should be a good bet to imagine that China tomorrow will be a key player on the market, not only in Asia, but in the whole world. India, of course, as we've seen in the report you shown earlier, and some other countries are now awakening to wine, such as Brazil, where consumption is growing, like in India. A very small amount of the population, an elite, as Rajiv Samant said earlier, is drinking wine, but it's growing and growing, and the value of the wines they're drinking is expanding every year.
I was reading somewhere that around about 60% of all wine in the world, it's currently drunk in Europe. You're saying that is going to change in the next decade or so. We're going to see more and more wine being drunk elsewhere.
Of course, because if you accept very highly populated countries who are mostly Muslim populated and they don't drink wine, in India or in China, if 1 or 2% of the population drinks wine, the amounts are so huge that they're game changers. They can change the whole market within just a few years. So
you were talking about countries like China, like India, and even Brazil previously. Do you think then that they're ready to be among the top 5 in the next few decades or so? I mean, the wine market so far, it's dominated by France, Italy, Spain, Australia, and Chile. Do you think we're going to see those countries in the top 5?
I think things are changing in very quickly, much quicker than we thought 20 or 30 years ago when the first economists said China is rising. China has become one of the key players. It's no secret for anybody anymore. And I think it's the same in the wine business. What's interesting is if you consider very long historical periods, Egyptians, when they ruled the world, were the first consumers and producers of wine 3,000 years ago. Romans did the same 2,000 years ago. 200 years ago, it was French, and then the English. During the 20th century, the Americans dominated the wine market on the consumer phase, on the production way. And now China is clearly emerging as a key player, whether it's producing, whether it's consuming, or being a key actor in the market with the Hong Kong hub, which now does the market.
Now, what about France? France, in terms of value, is still the world's #1 exporter. Do you think that that position could come under threat from all of these new countries, China in particular?
Well, the big advantage that France has is on the top price range. There's no competitor. There are very great wines in America, in Spain, in Italy, but not for the moment in that price range in China or in India. What we saw with the new world wines that you said earlier, whether it's Australia, Chile, or Argentina, was a very fierce competition on low price wines. And Australia has clearly bought itself a very big market share of the wines under €5. But it's going to take time before any foreign competitor, such as India or China, actually gets into the very high-end market of Premier Cru wines.
If we look at it from another French perspective, here in France, Chinese investors, they've been buying up dozens of vineyards in the Bordeaux region primarily, but also in the Burgundy region. Do you think there is a reason for concerns there? Because a lot of French people, of course, they're raising their eyebrows at this development, and they're perhaps slightly worried.
Well, I think worry is kind of a very important character of the French people in general, whether it's in wine business or in the other businesses. But I don't think